So I recently came across this tweet on X. The original user said, I don't want to hear your most boomer complaint. What's your most millennial complaint? Physical media is dying, and I hate it. Everything being digital and not actually owning what you pay for is absolute BS. It sure is. Especially whenever they add DRM for anti-piracy measures, and it just ends up making the game run worse. And it's a game you don't even own anyway, so you can't play it offline. You have to sign into the launcher every 2 to 3 days, or you can't play it. Or if you bothered to look at the thumbnail to see the very real point there, games aren't even shipping physically with CDs anymore. They just send codes that you download. So there's no point in getting the box unless you want to collect the box art. There's no point. You can just you can save yourself the wait and just buy the license to it, not the game, the license, which can be revoked at any time. If you don't play ball. To give you a bit of background, I've only got a 1 terabyte hard drive, and I've only ever really got 2 to 300 gigabytes free at any time. I'm just shuffling around the same 2 to 300 gigabytes because every game is huge nowadays. There's nothing you can do about it except for buy another hard drive or an SSD. At least with a disk, you could at least store some of the data on the disk. That way, you didn't have to have it fully downloaded. And then there's games out there that have install disks. I'm not saying they can't do that, but like well, what's the point? Like you have to download things with the disc. You know what I mean? So it's stupid. But that's still better than not having anything at all. They're at least sending out a disc. Okay, it's not a complete insult. Anyway, this guy down below says that he agrees with the spirit of it, but saying that physical is better than digital misses the point entirely and just empowers companies to screw us over as they decide if they even want to make physical releases. The actual issue is that we don't have the right to break DRM on digital media, and that if we did, we'd own it just as much or more than we do now with physical media. And it would have the advantages of both formats. I'm just going to put it to you this way. For us to have gotten as far as we have is terrible to begin with. We shouldn't have gotten this far. Okay, it's just an entire situation. There's a million different things you have to do. The most prominent of which I would say remove DRM. But if you remove DRM, look at it from the company's perspective. What do you do about piracy? DRM is probably their best method at detecting piracy. I'm not saying it's a good method. I'm actually saying the opposite. But how do you replace DRM is my point. What do you do if it's gone? I'm well aware of these always online methods, and having to sign in every 2 to 3 days is horrible, to say the least. Not to mention annoying. There's a million other adjectives I could describe it with, actually, but we're not going to do that. Some guy in the comments actually ties it to streams and labels and music artists, which is that's a pretty good point. A lot of people have to sign up with labels because there's nothing else they can do. That's just like the best way for them to get money, get funded, get out there, etc. And then they end up making like a quarter back for every dollar earned, and it's just like it's a cycle. It's evil. But there's nothing else to do. You know what I mean? They kind of have to feed into that system to get anywhere. I'm not saying there's not indie artists, but it's really hard. Okay, if labels didn't exist, like if they didn't have a purpose that they filled, like if there wasn't a real world use for them, they wouldn't exist. There wouldn't be money to be made. You know what I mean? So there's a void to be filled, and they're filling it. It's not fair, really, in the least. I will say, though, at least with labels, they do ship merch, okay? They ship physical, like something you can actually touch. It's insane. I love, like, it's great. It could be a lot better, but at least they give you something you can actually, wear, use, a CD, vinyl for the people who still use record players. I'm just saying, like, there's options. It's not just streaming nowadays. For those out there who actually care enough, there's options, and I'm not gonna say that about DRM or physical versus digital. There's like it needs to change. Okay, overall, it needs to change. It needs to be different, and it's not. It's not anytime soon, and that's just it's sad. It's unfortunate. It's something we have to live with, really. Actually, come to think of it, I'm not entirely sure when we went from buying a game to buying a license to use the game. I'm sure within like the past 10 to 15 years when always online consoles became a thing, even though that kind of backfired a little bit. I'm just saying they tried. I'd say about the past 10 to 15 years, really. Back when physical media was still a thing and like still used and purchased, but we've gradually shifted away from it, and it's an atrocity. It really is. But I mean, at the end of the day, nobody's really gonna boycott these companies. Okay, they're too big. Microsoft, Apple, EA, Dice. Like these games, like Activision. Like, come on, nobody's gonna stop buying their games. Something really substantial would have to happen for that to happen, and I don't think that's gonna happen. We put up with things, and we continue to put up with things. It's fascinating, really. And once you notice it, you can't go back. Okay, you can try, but it's done for. The damage is done. Once you know about it, you're aware of it. You're like, wow, this is messed up. But there's nothing anybody can do about it because everything's all established. I'm not saying we should have some sort of like giant, huge protest. Actually, that's not a bad idea. But it's something, okay? Like a demonstration, some sort of like message that you can get out there that says, oh, well, you know what? We want to own these things that we're buying and not buying, licensing. We want to own them and have them and, keep them. It's really an insane idea, but we kind of want to have that happen. So as of right now, I mean, there is definitely like there's a movement, there's a formation, a community around it. There is for sure. There's a community for everything. You know what I mean? But for something like this, you would need like an actual genuine message, like a huge, like it cannot be ignored thing. Because as it is right now, they're just like a niche sort of like, oh yeah, they're there, but nobody cares about them. Like it needs to be taken seriously. It needs to be looked at seriously, and it's not looked at seriously right now. Greedy executives are going to continue doing what they're doing until the status quo changes. However long that's going to be, we don't know. In my honest opinion, it probably won't happen for quite a while, if at all, really, because they're far too comfortable with us doing this in the first place. We're not buying the game anymore. We're buying the license to the game. So that means if you catch someone on a bad day, you say the wrong thing to someone, it might even happen by accident. You get totally banned from a service provider, from a company. You can't play any of their games unless you make another, like you circumvent it somehow. You know what I mean? You shouldn't have to do that. You should just be able to play the game itself. But guess what? You can't. There's so many rules and regulations passed on to the consumer. It's ridiculous. I don't even know what to say anymore. It's just it's sickening. It has to stop one way or another.